But yeah, what is this one?
All right, today we're going to be talking about some
Oh, but
Japanese.
did you start?
No, yes. Because a fun story about how Japanese whiskey was created. So I thought we'd take a deep dive into how it started, who started it, the two big companies that are still around today that made it happen, and why it has a unique flavor you can't taste anywhere else.
Which is funny because I only drink tequila.
You only drink tequila.
No, it's a lie. I drink beer. Beer is usually my go-to. We don't really drink that much anymore. Fun fact, like, cause I'm the only person in my family that drinks at all.
Oh.
And like, I used to drink a lot more during like college times and everything, but like, yeah, I cut back a lot
Yeah.
in the last like year or two, I would say.
This might
But
be this might be the
yes,
first
like,
episode I'm recording that I'm not drinking an alcoholic beverage. So that says
it
a lot
might
about
go
me.
smooth. I mean, I had a shot of tequila at like 10 o'clock at night before New Year's on New Year's Eve. So like, I feel like that's like, pretty impressive.
I think that's
Granted,
impressive. Yeah.
Granted, Mexican tequila is like 30 proof, but besides that,
Yeah. I love the creation of tequila and the agave part of it. It's the party drink. It's the one upper liquor.
either you love tequila or you hate tequila. And it's funny because when
Yeah.
I was in Mexico, like they taught us the whole concept of like the quote unquote high quality liquor, like tequila that you find in America. They're like, it's just terrible. If you feel any burn from tequila, it's not good tequila. Like it doesn't matter if you paid $100 for that bottle and it's like 80 proof, it's not good tequila. And I'm
Well,
like, oh,
It's both. It's like the same though, because it's like two sides of the same coin that are they're not good tequilas. Like because for American tequila, right? Like you said, if it hurts to take it, and not a good tequila. Like say Jose Cuervo, a lot of people say it tastes like piss, so it's not good. But then you say,
Yes.
ooh, Patron, it's great because you can't taste it. But that
say
also
that.
ruins the flavor of the tequila because you can't taste the tequila.
it's funny that you say that because like that's a whole thing that like they're like, yeah, like they you think like Patron's a good tequila, you think like that top tier thing in America is good. It's like, well, just because it's strong does not mean it's good. Because like, yeah, tequila is supposed to be more of like a sipping thing. It's not supposed to be like I'm gonna slam shots of this down. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like especially having like 18-year-old whiskey, or not whiskey, I'm sorry, especially having 18-year-old tequila. Speaking of whiskey, like, because the whole thing about like whiskey is like you want a good aged whiskey. You don't want something that's like out the barrel that quickly, and like that's how tequila is too. Like it's you don't realize like most liquors and like most alcoholic beverages, like they're supposed to be like really fermented and they're supposed to be like distilled for a while. I mean, it's like a fine wine, like wine. That's why like you see those in. I've never had a fancy bottle of wine, but I like like in the movies and everything. But they're like, oh, we're having like a fancy bottle of wine. It's like, oh, from like 1912, the Chateau de poop stain.
I learned if it has chateau in it, it's a good French wine because it's made from the chateau, like place where the river goes through the chateaus, and that's where like you want your wine to be from. That's like the high quality. The most expensive wine I had was only like $30 or $40, but it was from the chateau, and it was like amazing. It was from a manga called Drops of God, but it was like really good. I've learned the more ingredients that goes into a drink to make it taste better, the worse off that liquor is.
Yes.
Because it's like,
Yes.
there's a reason why all the cheap margaritas are made from like Jose Cuervo, because you're just going to slam a bunch of sugar and ice and just sour mix in there. So
I assume that's like similar how to like when you're doing, you want like good vodka, it's like super distilled, it's super like filtered. I like to get rid of impurities. I feel like that's what like it goes into alcoholic beverages in general, is the whole concept of like you want it pure. You don't want a lot of things into it.
yeah, same thing. It's like yeah.
Unless it's Goldschlager, then you want a lot of gold.
Ooh, Goldschlager. I think I'm going to get off topic because I talk about Goldschlager. That's like the original Fireball, and it has gold in it. I got a question for you. I thought about this week before we get into it. What is the cheapest steak you've ever eaten? Because I feel like
Steak?
yeah, because I feel like every cheap steak has a story.
So if you get like, we have a lot of like, in Philly, you have like a mixture of grocery stores where like you have your high quality, top tier like Whole Foods, and like your top tier groceries are expensive. Like your grocery list will be like $200 per person. And then you have your Aldi's and like your bargain outlets. And like, it's funny because I actually get steak from the Aldi's and bargain outlet here. And I think it's like $3.99, $4.99 for like a sirloin, like a cut of sirloin. And it's funny because like we don't have grills really in the city. So like you got to learn how to pan sear it really well, or reverse pan sear it. I mean, because I do that. I specifically bought a cast iron skillet to learn how to do this. So like now I can do a steak pretty well. I find with those steaks though, like it's best, and it could be sacrilegious what I'm saying. I like to slice them in half and make them pretty like thin, so they're pretty much like a skirt steak kind of thin, and then that's how I sear them real quickly. And like you're only doing like 1 minute at most at a side, because like it before you're letting it rest. So like I know how to do like a regular one where it's just like, okay, I'm doing it 2 minutes on this side, 1.5 minute on this side, let it sit for like 10 minutes, make sure the juices are in there, make sure beforehand it sits out for like 20 minutes, like salt, pepper, maybe a little garlic, a little rosemary, whatever you want. But yeah, that's that. It's pretty often I get the like $4.99 steak, and I know it's like not super high quality steak at the same time, but like I'm a little picky, so I'll like still look for something that has somewhat marbling in it, so like it's not too tough. But like it's one of those things where like it's such a fine line when you can take a really crap steak and still make something really good if you like know how to prepare it correctly. Like it's just more of a fine line if it's gonna be good or not. Like steak me is like a line.
Yeah,
like,
I've always known that steak for me too is like you don't need to do a lot to it to make it. The flavor's there. It's salt, pepper, a little bit of butter, maybe some rosemary if you're feeling spicy. But that's all you need.
I like a little garlic salt. But yeah, that's really all you need. I mean, unless you're steak is pretty much goes with so many things, because like I will have it like it pairs off with Mexican food so amazingly, and like that's definitely usually more seasoned. Even if you are having like Southeast Asian food and it's a cut of beef, it's like those are seasoned to hell. But like I think when you are doing small pieces of steak, like little like shreds of it in a sense, like in a mixture, like in a stir fry or something, yes, then seasoned to hell. But like if you're just having the steak itself, like the slab of meat, like no, you don't want to have that super seasoned.
Yeah, the American dream, a big old steak and potatoes and whiskey beside it. Mine was a $5 steak from a strip club. It was when I was living down at the beach. I was working late one night, so I got to the bar late, and 2 a.m. hit. Bars are closing. I'm like, well, I don't want to end the night, so I was like, I'm hungry. There's nothing good to eat here. So I said, you know what? I was looking up food in the area that wasn't fast food, and it was like special deal tonight over at the Dollhouse. We got a steak for $5, and I'm like, why not? I got an Uber over there. All my friends left, so I go to the strip club. I pay $15 to get in, and I sit down and I order the steak, order me a beer, take a shot, and then I'm sitting there, and this girl walks up to me. It's like, hey, you want to hang out? You want to dance or something like that? And I'm like, no, I'm just here for the steak. Like, and she was like, oh, thank God. And then like sits down. She's like, can I join you? I'm like, yeah, sure. Sits down, lights a cigarette, and we just talk for like 3 hours. But I feel bad about not tipping when you go to a place that tips. I know you're a little bit of a tipping culture here, but at the strip club, I was like, okay, well, I have $40 on me. I get them every now and then. I go up for dumb reasons, and I just throw money and then like walk back to keep eating my steak. So like we'd be like, oh, if this person does this move, then I'm gonna go up there and throw $10. And then like somebody was like, coming to the stage, Dakota, and I'm like, that's my name. 20, here you go. And we just had fun the whole night. It was great. I got my friends some jobs. It was we just sat there and talked. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, the cheapest steak that I ever had is probably one of the most expensive ones. It wasn't that good. It was at a strip club, but I paid $15 to get in. I paid $40 for tips. $5 for the food, and then minus like $20 for drinks. So I probably spent like $60 on this cheap steak. So my cheapest steak is my most expensive one.
But was it good? Wait, was it good or not?
It was all right. It wasn't the worst for a strip club. So I mean,
because I feel like the like stupid joke is like they have pretty good food.
Yeah, it was it was not bad. It was, I mean, $5. Like, come on now. Like, it wasn't like a skirt steak. It was like probably like a.
Is it like chuck?
Like a. No, no.
What is that? What is like the lowest level of like
Nope.
meat from like the cow?
Probably the rump, right? Nobody wants
Rump?
to eat the ass, right? So, moving on. Japanese whiskey. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to talk about one of the most magnificent, delicate,
I
wonderful
like how we
whiskeys
transitioned
out
from
there.
that.
Oh yeah,
That was
absolutely.
a good transition. You're
Thank
just
you.
like, let me talk about cheap steak and let's talk about high quality whiskey.
Yeah, exactly.
One and the same. They're the same thing.
They're the
They go
same
they go
thing.
together. You definitely wouldn't have. I feel like if you're having a cheap steak, you're probably gonna have cheap whiskey with it.
Like a little Jameson on the side, or a little like
I didn't think Jameson that bad?
No,
Because
it's
like
not. I
I
love
feel
it.
like for St. Patrick's Day, I've had like Jameson a bunch of times and it
yeah.
hasn't been.
It's a $30
terrible.
bottle.
Yeah. Well,
What's a cheap name? Like name a mountain and then name an animal, and that's your cheap whiskey. We got Buccaneer Wolf. That sounds like a cheap whiskey to me.
Teton Squirrel is my favorite.
So Japanese whiskey is one of the most delicate, most like intervening stories about making a whiskey for a country. Okay, Japan never had a whiskey before. They just drank whatever they made, sake, a lot of like sake based, like rice based beers, but never their own way of whiskey. And
Yeah, because you wouldn't think of that. You would think of like Scotland when you think of like you think of Scotland, you think of America. Like that's what you think of when you think of whiskey. You don't really think of
yeah.
yeah.
And there's a lot of differences between Scotch and Japanese whiskey, but there is a big intertwining taste and story that comes between the two. So my name is Dakota Broski. I'm joined here today by...
Hey, I'm Richard. You saw me with our streaming farms video and podcasts and probably other things. So we're back.
We're back. We're Brews, and who knew? So, starting off, indulging in a few drinks is something that Japanese are no strangers to. In fact,
Shocking.
it's intertwined with their part of the culture. I make up words, but I don't know them. There are
You tried
even
3 times. We're like intergrind, interwined,
twined,
pined.
interpine trees. That's gin. There are.
Is it?
No, it just tastes like pine trees for a lot of people. I love gin, so my girlfriend says it tastes like pine trees.
Gin is gross. Gin is probably the worst.
I love
The
gin.
worst liquor
give
of all
me
time.
give me a martini with just 3 shots of Bombay Sapphire, a little bit of vermouth in and out, 3 olives.
You would just take 3 shots of Bombay Sapphire and be happy though.
Moving on, there are several types of drinking parties and events often held work-related in Japan, meaning that they inspire from conversation. Alcohol comes with its own etiquette in Japan. Pouring your favorite drinks for friends, acting out of love and respect, and making sure that their glass is full. Japanese bar. I used to be a bartender, right? So I used to watch a lot of bartending videos. Japanese bartending, one of the most talented, etiquette things I've ever seen out of a country's bartending. Okay, they will... legit, like when you watch shows like The Anime Bartender, or if you go on Google and watch how they make, or YouTube, how they make cocktails, everything goes into the presentation of it, the taste of it, everything.
Those TikToks where like they always have like the highball glasses and they have the little really fancy like ice.
Oh yeah, and they
They
take
always do the little spinny thingy.
yeah, and before even that, they'll like take the ice and just chip away at it, and make the perfect spear and drop it in there.
Before you get farther into the actual like fancy part of it, do you know why their culture and drinking is very like hand in hand tied?
I do not know. Are you going like that was a question? I thought you were going to tell me. I'm the one teaching you.
That was a legitimate question. I assumed that would like go into it because like
there might be a reasoning for it somewhere in this script, but from what I know, it's just a part of the just hand in hand with it. I guess maybe going back to ceremonies with just like a tea ceremony, like a sake ceremony. So that's my guess on it.
well, it's like not it's like we have our happy hours in America where like we will go out and drink after a long day of work or like maybe on a Friday or something. But like I know it's like out there, it's pretty typical to just their alcohol is cheap out there, like, and not bad alcohol, like their good alcohol is cheap out there. So like I just didn't know if like it goes hand in hand. Like it's very common for people to get blasted after work.
And there's also that's the working culture side of that too. Like I need to like block out for the only 4 hours I have off and then get back to it.
Literally.
But with the Ask Napa, so the with Japanese bars and stuff like that, they have a lot of mutual respect for people who would not. So they'll have a happy hour, right, where you pay $12, and for that hour or two, drink as much as you can. But people have enough respect to just not abuse it, and they'll just like drink as much as they want. That's like maybe a little fun, but not overly, Shibuya meltdown. Which if you don't know what that is,
not like America or England or Canada, where it's just
like, so yeah, if you know where the Shibuya meltdown is, Shibuya is a big district where a lot of shops meet business side of things, and people will just go down and get plastered. So you have a lot of like hashtag Shibuya meltdowns where people are just blackout on the street, passed out in their own piss. So that's what that is. But yeah, no, it's a lot of mutual respect for a lot of bars. I love bartending too, because if somebody has a question, right? If a customer has a question about a bar down the street, they will, despite having customers in there, close like the register, walk around the bar, and walk that customer down the street to the bar they were trying to find, and then walk back, and everybody in there has enough respect to just not F with it. If I went to the bathroom as a bartender in America, I would have like lost everything, like
Oh yeah.
everything. So it's crazy how the drinking culture is amazing in Japan, but specifically with Japanese whiskey. Today, we're talking about specifically Japanese whiskey. So, who introduced Japanese whiskey in the first place?
Was it the Scots?
It was the Scots. So there's a reason why Japanese whiskey somehow tastes like Scotch. It tastes like Scotch without the Scotch. And there's a reason behind that. The man who introduced it in the first place was Commodore Matthew Perry, who was sent to Japan on a mission to reopen the country and establish trade between Japan and the United States. Because if you don't know, Japan, for the longest time, 1800s and before, was trying to be seclusive. They didn't mess with anybody. The only people they messed with was the Dutch. The Dutch trading company was the only people they would ever trade with, because the Dutch didn't care about colonization. They didn't care about converting your religion. They only wanted money and things. And Japan was like, okay, we'll give you this stuff and you give us whatever. And that was the only trading company they would work with. So for the longest time, Japan was, especially in the Sokoku period, and before that, was just isolated. It was only around 1853, around the Chicago World Fair, where they started like coming out and trying to get more out there with the world. You ever heard of the Chicago World Fair?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so that was one of the big things where they were like the first time they ever went out publicly and became, hey, we're Japan, we live here. It was funny too, because they were kind of petty about it. They wanted to make their stance well known, because even in the Chicago World Fair, their booth, I guess you could say, was set up on an island by itself. Really? And so that was still isolated. They're like, hey,
yeah,
we're here, but maybe not so fast. Just back up a little bit. But Japan wanted to open up the country a little bit, and America saw this as an opportunity to maybe get in there and do a little bit more, opening up. Let's introduce you to a few more things, right? So Matthew Perry supplied the Japanese with something they have never experienced before, and that was whiskey. Now, Japan has their sake, they have their rice beers, but whiskey from grains was a new thing to them. And the people that went out to try and find new ways to make Scottish whiskey a thing, they brought it back to Japan thinking that everybody was going to love this. They were like, this is so cool, unique, and fun. Everybody's going to love Scotch, right?
People there don't like new things. They don't like new things.
Hated it because it was too strong of a drink.
Really?
Because you think about it, Japan and their drinks are normally like, sake, nice sippers, nice little smooth rice wines and stuff. And then you bring them a shot of like Scotch, the hardest Scotch. Right.
Yeah, I never thought of that, because like you think of like I guess the media makes something like sake seem like something like vodka. They don't make it seem like it's like a sipping thing. It's like it's heavy. Mm-hmm. So like I cause when you said that, I was like very shocked. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like they have heavy things, but I'm like, no, they don't. Like you're right, they don't have like and that might tie back to what you said about the culture being like they don't get like as blackout like that.
Yeah. Like, there's no reason to like strong arm your drink. It's just like
Yeah,
enjoy it, sip it. It's elegant, right? To where we are like,
it's like Natty Light.
drink Natty Light. Will this make me go blind? I don't know, but you know, so there are two people around 1879, from Osaka who wanted to make whiskey in Japan. They wanted the whiskey to be a really big hit in Japan because they loved it so much, but they had to make it work. These two people are known as Shinjiro Tori and Masataka Takesuru. And these two people are wanting to make Japanese whiskey a whiskey in Japan a thing. But nobody liked it, so they had to figure out how to make this work. They spent most of their early lives before working with importing alcohol, so they already had a history in alcohol, specifically Spanish wines, right? Which is a little bit more elegant than a hard Scotch.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, also with the Spanish wines, failed miserably as they tried to also create a wine that was more of a Japanese palate because people also didn't take to Spanish wines as well. So
Which
Japan,
is weird because those are like such elegant wines. Usually.
Yeah.
That'd be like having a French wine or Italian wine. Like unless you just don't like wine, which is fine.
Yeah,
But like not enjoying those two would be like that's a little strange.
So I guess it's like my only guess is probably the fact that because they were so used to white wines, could you think of rice, sake, white wine,
Yeah.
hard berry wine, probably a little bit more of a bolder taste to it or more flavorful. So the problem is no matter what they brought into Japan, whether it be Scotch or red wines from Spain, nobody liked it because it didn't fit the palate that Japanese people wanted. So the failure, although it was miserable, inspired him to create a wine catered to the Japanese palate, something that he would do for also whiskey in the future. So he called the creation Akadama Port wine. His wine was received very positively, right? Especially compared to the Spanish wine. The success
Was the Spanish wine specifically like labeled as a Spanish wine?
Yeah, so I guess you would have like the same way now where different wines from different places people have preferences to it, right? So
Yeah.
around this time Spanish wine was mostly sought after when it came to
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean,
yeah.
it's still is which makes perfect sense. So, do you think it comes down to actual flavor? Or do you think it came down to marketing?
I would say
both?
flavor because you still get a lot. I mean, nowadays you can get a wine out of California and it's pretty much really good, right? But before, a lot of like valuable assets were available for a lot of other countries more than this one. You think of Spain, you think of a lot of more fruits available, more vibrant, like more flavors to work with, ingredients to work with.
Yeah.
So, and it was also a big part of the shipping where a lot of shipment would come through it out. So you could easily just throw out a whole bunch of wine on the way out of shipping a whole bunch of other stuff that also came in to where it would just get around the world and you'll be known as Spanish wine is the best wine. So you think about Spain going to all parts of the world. So this success after the wine inspired Tori to open up the Osaka plant in 1919. Shinjiro Tori next goal was to create a whiskey with the same intent as wine. So you think of Japanese whiskey, it's not as new, it's not as old as you think it is. It's the 1900s, right? He needed the right ingredients, he needed the right tools, but first of all, he needed to learn the right techniques. So he had heard of a Japanese man who had been learning how to take whiskey properly from Scotland, right? And he hired him to make the first Japanese distillery for whiskey. And this is how Shinjiro Tori and Masakatara met, was creating this distillery. And a name might be a little familiar to you in the future. So,
Jack Daniels.
the other pioneer for this whiskey was, as I said, Masataka. He was born in Hiroshima, Japan in 1894. So this man's like 20 or 30 making this stuff.
When he died?
When did he die?
Yeah.
I'll find that in a minute. That's a good question, actually. Oh no. Maybe. Oops. Let's see here. I actually gotta look that up. Oh my god.
I like how you're like, oh, let me look that up, and it's just like you just
I was like, Hiroshima, Japan, and before 1900s. I wonder when he passed away. Let's see here. He's a Japanese chemist. He was died Oh, 1979 in Tokyo. We're good. We're good.
He made it. He was totally in Tokyo.
He dodged that bullet. Okay.
He dodged that bomb.
So he was famous already for making his own sake brewery, right? But he
Not
had
a sake bomb?
Not the one. Also, a lot of Japanese people apparently hate that because it's Americanized. You ever had a sake bomb before, college boy?
I have had one. I've had it drop on me before.
Oh, okay, yeah. I remember I went to this Japanese restaurant. It was like, and then this bunch of college kids just came in, and all of a sudden just sake bomb, sake bomb, sake bomb, and like just banging on the table in this restaurant, and everybody's looking at them like, what a bunch of fucking assholes, man.
I preferred Jaeger bombs back then.
I did love Jaeger bombs. I do love Jaeger.
Well, yeah, we did a Jaeger bomb at Otakon together.
Oh yeah, I love the
We
Jaeger
did.
bombs. I love. I did enjoy some sake bombs. I wasn't like
I don't love them. They're not that like. I also don't like to drink that much, so like it's fine.
Oh, okay. I like Japanese. I like a lot of Japanese beer too, so it was just nice to sip on. The guy that served it to me, he served it warm, and it was like a cold. So it was a weird mix, but other than that, it was nice. So
I have a hot take. I think like if you give me like what is it, Sapporo, like I've had it a bunch of times. Like I don't really think I've had it because there's a bunch of places here in Philadelphia. There's a lot of Japanese places like to eat and drink, or at least a number of them. And I like whenever I have them, I'm like, it really doesn't. Most of the beers don't really taste different from like literally having like something similar to a Budweiser. To me.
really,
Yeah, I don't really think they're that. Again, I'm like you though, so like I have terrible taste when it comes to someone's like, "Do you want a beer?" I'm like, "I'll have a Bud Light. That's fine." Like I don't even think about it.
yeah, I can immediately taste the difference in like the Asahis or the Sapporos, like the rice prominence in it. I can immediately taste.
It doesn't taste like Freedom.
Ah, you're right. There's not enough Fahrenheits in this, so you probably measured this in Celsius. Okay, so yeah, let's see. So as mentioned before, Takatsuru traveled to Scotland in 1918 to try and learn chemistry involved into making this Scottish whiskey. Up to this point, Japan has never heard of a proper way to make whiskey. Or try to replicate it. So even trying to mimic it to be able to make its own version was impossible for people. At first, the Japanese tried to replicate the whiskey, and they had it tasted by mixing it with different spices or alcohols or sugars, but never tasted the same, never tasted good, and never picked it off the ground. So Takatsuru kept on trying to find a way to make this work and figure out what Japan was lacking. This journey to Scotland, he did take a chemistry class on distillery at the Glasgow University, and even sought after the J.A. Nettleton, author of The Manufacture of Spirits Conducted in the Distilleries of the United Kingdom. This book was obviously made in the 1900s. A book that has greatly inspired him to make his own whiskey, to teach him how to distill whiskey properly. But unfortunately, not only could he not figure out this, he could not afford the mentorship between the author, and instead sought after another teacher, which ended up being J.R. Grant of the Longmorn Distillery Company. While attending Scotland, Masataka met Ella Colwell, who eventually introduced him to her sister and his future wife. Oh, when's this romance show coming out? The Birth of Japanese Whiskey.
You better have. Why don't they have names like the Miyazaki ones?
Why don't have like what names?
Why don't you have like names for them? Like you Mama Miyazaki,
Mommy Zaki,
like
Daddy Zaki.
Mommy's, yeah. What, we're not gonna do this time?
I'm working on it. I had to improvise that one. So in 1920, he met his future wife, Rita Cohen. Tetsuro and Rita got married before moving back to Japan in Osaka, specifically before being approached by Tori. Now, Takatsuru then joined the distillery that would one day make the legendary Suntory. That's a name that is well known for whiskey. You ever heard of Suntory whiskey?
No.
What? And actually, I do believe later on this company ended up splitting over differences, and they ended up making those two well-known distilleries. So, Tori founded the Yamazaki Distillery in 1923 using the Scottish techniques that he learned. It was years to make the liquor that Tori was proud of, but by 1929, the two had their first product, the Shiro Fuda whiskey, which is still sold today. While after this contract with the Yamazaki distillery was over, Masataka branched off into their own distillery, which would later be called, this is the one, Nika in Hokkaido. So you have Nika Distillery whiskey, and you have Nika whiskey, and you have Suntory whiskey. Those are the two big names when it comes to Japanese whiskey. Both made from the same guy, from the same company, from the same university, and the same family, apparently, because somebody was doing the sister. This, what great love stories don't start with a little bit of whiskey. So this is where Takasura originally went to, wanted to place the Yamazuki distillery due to the soil and the climate being close to Scottish conditions. So you remember Scottish whiskey is made from peat. So a lot of peat goes into Scottish whiskey.
Davidson?
Pete Davidson?
Is that was? Oh, okay.
Not the one, I don't think. So Pete.
They've just been using it for years.
So yeah, peat was used
for.
It gives it a prominent, like, bold taste to it, right? So a Japanese whiskey is a lot less. Bartending thing out there. There's a cocktail that's one of my favorites called a last word. And it uses, I believe, gin or vodka with green chartreuse and a little bit of something else. But there's also called a Pete's word, which is substituting that vodka or gin for scotch. And it's really good. So if you ever want to look up a Pete's word, and that's a great, if you don't want to drink straight scotch, Pete's word. It's great. And also, I love green chartreuse. So, the company would prove that create a whiskey more comparable to Scottish whiskey than what the Yamazaki distillery would produce, which was more catered to the Japanese palate. In 1940, Takasura landed his own product, the Nika whiskey. As we know, Shintoro Yamazaki distillery would eventually be renamed to Suntory. So you have two people. You have Tori's, which is Suntory, and then you have, what's his name? Homeboys. Takasuru, who made Nika whiskey. So you have these two people, went to the same university, did the same thing, branched out and made their own companies. So the companies would also establish a big rivalry that still is prominent today. They needed to get this drink right because people still were a little bit iffy on the flavor of Japanese whiskey. They faced a lot of trials and errors developing their first whiskeys, but certainly they did not stop them from trying to create a new type of whiskey that was monumental and dedicated to the Japanese palate. They took what they learned from his time in Scotland and they used to create something great, something new and exciting, catered to their own taste and also the taste of the country behind them. It was a love letter to the Scottish people that create Japanese whiskey in the first place, or Scottish people that created whiskey in the first place, and the Japanese people who witnessed the birth of this new localization of liquor. Because this is also a monumental thing, because if you think about it, this is the first whiskey that came out that was the first big liquor thing to come out based off the inspiration from being included with the outside world, right? Before, it was whatever we had in Japan, being secluded, but being open, it was a proof that they can make things based off of other countries, but also with their own twist on them. So localizing this would be a great, bright future. Their passion burned uncontrollably. The man was frantic, hopped up on mead and liquor, ready to make this happen.
It's funny hearing about this because, like, by this time, this is like a time in American, like North American culture and European culture where, like, this is like been around for so long. It's already been like mastered. Like, you were going to the saloon in the 1800s and you were ordering a shot of whiskey or like scotch on the rocks or something. Like it wasn't just uncommon. It was already like a mastered thing. It's weird hearing about like something that like has existed somewhere else for so long and being like, oh, we're in the 1900s and they don't know whiskey.
Yeah, Japanese whiskey is not even 100 years old. Or maybe just now 100 years old at this point. Like, you think about other whiskeys that have been around for hundreds of years. So
I mean, yeah, you see like the labels on like even like cheap whiskey bottles, like low, like what are they called? Bottom shelf like whiskey bottles in the liquor store, and it still has like the date of like 1850, like 1842, or
Tennessee
like,
Mountain.
1820.
It was made in the backyard of Bubba Joe, and
exactly.
It took 3 generations of going blind to get this right, and
well, because like even kids at like that age, like no, like I feel like most kids, you know what whiskey is. Like it's not like a unknown substance.
Yeah, you got your basic liquors, right? You want a liquor.
Yeah.
You go to high school and you learn about all these people drinking in these movies, and you go to college,
Yeah.
and then all that stuff. I mean, don't drink underage, but hypothetically in Europe or whatever, when you're 19, and you just drink like, I want vodka. You get vodka, then you're like, oh wait, this is whiskey. This is harder. It tastes like stuff, and then oh, what is this, tequila? We'll try tequila with a little lime and a little salt, and then what is this, rum? Not many people drink rum straight. I don't know. D does. It's weird.
Yeah, you don't really sip that.
Yeah, I know a people that do, and they're crazy. Love you, D. And then you get Long Island iced teas. What was your first Long Island iced tea?
Never had one.
You never had a Long Island iced tea?
When I was a bartender, I used to make them all the time for people, but no,
I hated those
never,
people.
Never.
I hated those people who got a Long Island
No
iced tea.
one, because no one gets that drink and says like, "Oh, I want to have a good time." It's like, "Oh, I want," like, no one drinks that drink to like enjoy themselves. I think the funniest
Nobody
time, like, when I
likes
was a bartender,
Yeah.
no one likes themselves when they're drinking one of those. The funniest thing I think was like when I was a bartender, we had like, it was like a nicer bar, so like I didn't really card people that much, but like, because like the drinks were like a minimum per cocktail was like $15, so like it's not like kids were coming in there to like get a 15. If you were going in there to get a $15 cocktail, I'm like whatever. It was funny though because there was one I remember this kid came in and he's like he wanted a Long Island iced tea, and I remember them asking me after like I made it for them. They're like, well, where's the iced tea? I'm like, what?
Oh man, I remember somebody came in and they were like, oh, I want a Long Island iced tea, but I want top shelf, because he like, I guess, had money but like didn't know how to use it. So it was.
I had a friend that did that before. Like that was he paid like $40 for that drink.
At that point, like, homie, you're just mixing liquors. Like, you can't. Same thing
with
you don't put an expensive tequila in a margarita. Okay, you put the bottom shelf in there and just down it.
No, I'm agree to disagree on that one.
Depends on the margarita. So like,
If it's like a fresh like $20 margarita, I expect like you should be expecting maybe not top tier, but at least like mid tier.
But I want like homemade sour mix at that bar, kind of tequila.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'm talking about like bottom shelf sour mix from food, like the Walmart kind of.
Oh no, they're putting they're putting bottom shelf.
Depends on the bar you go to.
You're lucky
definitely.
if you get like Vlad for your vodka for like a vodka cranberry.
Yeah. Those limes been there since 10 a.m. when they made them.
Yeah.
My first time Long Island iced tea was in LA at Anime Expo. And it was actually my first time at a bar, really, because we went to go to this bar and I don't know what to drink. Because I always drank, but I never drank at a bar. So my friends go, why don't you get a Long Island iced tea? Okay. I drink one. I'm like, it's delicious. And then everybody's talking. I order another one, and nobody's really keeping up with me. So I drink one. I drink two. Delicious. Three. Delicious. Four. I get my fifth one. I look at my friends, and I'm like, guys, something's weird here. I've seen this guy make 5 Long Island iced teas, and he hasn't touched that pitcher of iced tea over there. And they're like, do you know what's in a Long Island iced tea? And I say, no. And then as soon as I say that, I wake up. I woke up on a sleeping bag in my friend's room, hugging a bottle of vodka. And that was my first time ever drinking a Long Island, and my last. So.
Yeah, they're not good. I don't understand people who are like, yeah, that's my choice drink. Why was it your choice drink?
You're
running away from something.
You're running away from something. You hate yourself, or you're just a bad person. Okay.
Yeah.
Or you
pretty much.
Or you're 26 and you date 14-year-olds. I don't know. Like, what's going? Like, like, get your DC shoes and your jean shorts and your little shitty beard out of here. Where was I? Other than wiping on. If you drink Long Island iced teas, I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend you, but do better. Okay. So, Japanese whiskey contains all types of yeasts that can be result from companies producing and specializing in strains like Suntory. So, there's a big word right here. I'll put it right here. I'm not going to pronounce it. Suntory's lactose bacillus.
Lumina ultramicroscopic silicone volcaniconiosis.
It's kind of like that. That sounds familiar.
Is it?
I'm going to show you, actually. Hold on. That's what it says. The Orcris deratrice bacadif vocatal.
Centorius lactobacillus. Bacillus. I think it's bacillus. Lactobacillus.
That's what I get when I eat too much pizza.
Centorius lactobacillus.
Yeah.
There you go. I said it for you.
All right, thank you. That's what I get when I eat too much pizza. I get too much lactobacillus in my throat. Japanese whiskey also uses a native Mizunara oak, which is aged. It's whiskeys, which undoubtedly gives it its unique flavor. So it's aged in crates and barrels that are unique to Japan.
How long does it age for?
I would say it doesn't say. I'm gonna look that up right now, but I would assume like maybe at least a year, because I believe it's like 6 months.
I would hope longer than a year,
Well,
because good whiskey should be aged for like 18.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. That's. I wonder how long it takes, because Maker's Mark, you can get your own select makers, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, certain bars will do. So you can go and like get all the staves custom made, and it's pretty cool.
But like even a beer takes 2 to 3 years for a lot of beers.
How long is Japanese whiskey? Okay. Additionally, the whiskey must be aged for 3 years. So
Okay.
at least 3 years. So back to my lactobacillus.
Your Centaureus lactobacillus?
Yeah.
Bacillus?
Bless you.
Thank you.
Localized flavors apart from the overseas counterparts. Another glaring difference between Japanese whiskeys in comparison to Scottish whiskeys is that it's still the stills that it's distilled in. Japanese makes use of its stills with different shapes, sizes, and adding lots of variant and unique single malts to their product. Scottish distilleries, on the other hand, often use very uniform shapes and sizes, since Scottish distilleries tend to specialize more towards narrow and specialized select of malts from the Japanese distilleries do. So different shapes, different sizes, different grains being processed through it. I'm not going to go into how Japanese whiskey itself is distilled. Go to the distillery. You get free tour. You get a tour. You get free whiskey at the end of it. It's great. I love going to distilleries. So Japanese whiskey already limits a variety of whiskeys that Japanese people have access to locally. Japanese whiskey is an absolute love child of liquor itself, who is a very big love child of Scottish ingredients and techniques. But overall, the passion for the drink is obviously Japanese, and has its own unique and personal heart and spin onto it, thanks to these two amazing guys going over to Scotland, studying there, and dedicating their life to this Japanese whiskey. Imagine like making wine and everybody hates it, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna go screw everything, I'm not doing nothing here, I'm gonna go travel abroad and learn how to make whiskey that Japanese people will love, and that's just your life for like 10 years. Like, I couldn't imagine. I get ADHD bored of like anything I learn. I want to learn a new editing skill, I give up a week later. Like, I'm over it. 10 years of my life to making whiskey.
I mean, if you want to be a master of something, it makes sense. I mean, think about like how long there are so many of these painters. Like, think about like Van Gogh or Picasso, how long they put their time and effort into their craft. I mean, I feel like when you are doing anything like that, like even if it is like a trade, like if you're a plumber or you are like an electrician or like doing some kind of artisan thing, especially back then, it wasn't abnormal to put that much time and effort into your craft to kind of like master it.
Yeah, I've never been that much passion about anything I wanted to put into, like, just dedicating that strictly to that, other than this wonderful podcast. So basically, just Japan came into this whole whiskey thing, or at least two guys did, with wanting to get a lot of good influence from outside the world. Because you think about it, Japan started opening up around the mid 1800s, and this whiskey was a result of that in 1920. It's a lot of big influences from around the world that made Japan, what it is today. Which is.
Do you think there was a big dip during wartime in popularity of it? Because if you think about America in World War II era, like anything that was not like American specific, like gigantic drop in I mean, even if it was like German made.
Yeah.
Like you think about today, like people think of like Germany made things in America, like, oh, that's such like high quality. But like back then, like if it was like Italian or German or wherever it was, they'd be like, oh, we're not touching that. I'm not eating that. I'm not going to have a pizza.
Yeah.
Do you think that's how it was? Because like that country can be very xenophobic.
Uh-huh.
So like I didn't know if you think. I wonder if there was like a drop in like people having it during like that era, or like if there was like a dip in like how you can see like when things are like research, like Google research, like the eras. I wonder if there's like if you saw like the timeline, there'd be like a little dip there.
I don't know. 'Cause I feel like at that point it was like, this is our version of it. Like we're gonna love this. This is ours. Japanese
Gotcha.
whiskey. Because it wasn't just straight Scottish whiskey. It was just Japanese whiskey at
Yeah.
that point with Japanese names to
Okay.
it, ingredients, trees. So yeah, the America didn't use anything that wasn't American. They didn't.
Yeah.
Not even the people. Don't look up Japanese camps during World War II. It's not a fun time. America's not a good person. They got a history. They can get canceled anytime. So today, today Japan is one of the world's biggest manufacturers in whiskey, only behind Scotland and the United States. Japanese whiskey continues to be and perform remarkably well in both productions and sales in Japan. Both Suntory and Nikka continue to win international awards for how great of a whiskey they have. It has not only put Japan on the map for one of the biggest distillers and creators of whiskey in general, but also just how much potential it had coming up from nothing. So, Japanese whiskey didn't exist. And then one day, two dudes went over to Scotland and just made Japanese whiskey. A lot more complicated than what it sounds, and put Japan on the map for one of the biggest, beautiful whiskeys out there.
Have you had it before?
I love it. Oh yeah, I've had both. I was there's a Nikka coffee grain that's really good. It don't taste like coffee, but it's amazing.
Do you prefer? Because you probably can tell the difference between that and like
Yeah.
a bourbon from Tennessee.
Yeah.
But like, is it like one of those things where you can compare it and say I like this better than the other, or is it one of those things where it's
yeah.
like they're just two very different things?
So the best way, if you never had Japanese whiskey, the best way I can describe it, it's like tasting scotch without the scotch. There's no gut punch. The flavor is there, but there's no burn. There's no gut punch. There's no, man in it. There's just an elegant, beautiful taste of just smooth. It's the smoothest whiskey I've ever had in my life. And I drink a lot. So I would I love it's pricey though. It is pricey. Bottles for good Japanese whiskey like a Nikka, a coffee grain could get you from anywhere from $60 to $90, right?
So you're not mixing it. You're not having
No. There are a lot of good Japanese, like I know there's a lot of good Japanese whiskey sours that people make.
Okay.
And a lot of other whiskey cocktails. I personally would choose to drink it straight. But if you don't like straight whiskey, if you try it and don't like it, throw it in a whiskey sour. Throw it in a different type of whiskey cocktail. It really is just a good, solid whiskey.
Do you think that ruins a good whiskey though? Because I've met many people who are like whiskey connoisseur people. Like they
The whiskey
know they're very
sommeliers.
rye. They know they're very they're morbid. They know they're very bourbon. They're rye. Like they drink it on the rocks because they're like, this is what I want to taste. Like
Yeah.
I've heard like if you take a really good whiskey like that and mix it, it just kind of like, what's the point of having said whiskey?
I'm not gonna make a rum.
Do you
I'm
agree or
not gonna
disagree?
make. I'm not gonna make a Japanese whiskey and Coke out of it.
Yeah,
but,
that's what I'm saying. Like you're not
yeah.
you're gonna take a bottle of, like if you have a Jack and Coke, like it makes sense. But like I feel like if you're paying crazy amounts of money for like a bottle of something,
Yeah.
you want to have it and sip it for like what it is. Like there's unless there's like a certain drink that you specifically mix with it, like you have for it, like. If you're having a certain thing because you want like a White Russian because that's like specifically the drink you want, like it makes sense. But like, yeah, I didn't like you wouldn't really want to muddle the flavor that much, I wouldn't think.
My rule of hand as a former bartender and alcoholic now is the fact that the more ingredients you put
Which is the former?
The former?
Yeah.
The former bartender. Drinker now. The rule I have is the more ingredients you put into a drink, the less expensive that liquor's probably going to be. Long Island iced tea, you're throwing $8 bottles in there, baby. But like, say, a whiskey sour, the main ingredient for that is whiskey. So what you're tasting, so even though you're making a whiskey sour, right? You're mixing ingredients, but the main taste and the main focus of that drink
Should be
is
the
still the
whiskey.
whiskey. So you're going to be able to taste if you throw a Scotch in there, or you throw a Japanese whiskey in there, if you throw a Tennessee whiskey in there. Whiskeys with an E and not with an E, Canadian whiskey, you're going to notice it because that's the main ingredient of it, right? When you have margarita or Long Island iced tea, the other ingredients overpower it most. Well, not the bad margaritas. So that's I would say that more ingredients that go into a drink, if that liquor is not the main cause or the main taste or main focus of that drink, cheap. But like whiskey sour, you can throw a Suntory whiskey in there. It's going to taste amazing and unique, and you're going to know that difference.
I think I agree to disagree with that. Like, I don't think that could be the end all be all when it comes to drinks, because like you go to those very fancy cocktail bars, like the speakeasies that have the like though they have drinks that are like pretty complex, but like I feel like as long as you have the basis of like this basis is like this drink, it makes sense. It doesn't, because like I think it depends. Like if you're mixing, I agree with you. If you go to like a run of the mill bar and it's like you go to an Applebee's and they have to drink like 6 different things. Like a tutti frutti kind of drink, you're like, okay, maybe that's probably not gonna be great. But like if you go to like a nice speakeasy that's like a $20 drink, I feel like even if it has like 6, 7 things in it, it's like all it's tiny ingredients. Like it's like a here's a little like mint, like just the tiniest bit of mint, the tiniest bit of like
it's like
smoky flavor.
I guess when I say in more ingredients, I mean more like does it overpower the
Papa John's
pizza? That's Little Caesars. Can we rank all the pizzas one day? That'd be a good video too.
Yes, that'd be a great one.
Oh my god. I went to New York once. I gotta always fold my pizza. It's always the best. I
do.
Yeah. So with Japanese with whiskey, cocktails in general, when I say that the more that goes into a drink, I don't mean like there could be 7 ingredients, but the whiskey is still gonna be the focal point of it. I guess I meant like throwing in Coke, club soda, all this other like big drinks that overpower the original. There could be additions to it. So like
because that's what a martini is really at the end of the day.
Yeah. My first, because there's people that like vermouth still in it mixed with the gin or vodka. Oh, there's people like me who just love the vermouth on the coating of the glass and the olives in it, and that's it. What was the thing about? I was gonna say about with cocktails. I used to work at a beer and shot place. Like, that was my favorite like place to go. That was my workplace. And I remember a couple of college kids came in and they were like, "Can we get a whiskey sour?" And I was like, "Well, I can make a whiskey sour, but it's not going to be a whiskey sour. It's going to be just whiskey and sour mix." And they were like, "Is that not what a whiskey sour is?" And I'm like, "There you go, $8, $10." You know, it's like it's just weird because every bar is different, every person's different. Like right now, if I got a whiskey sour, I wouldn't get a whiskey sour that's not made with like the egg whites and the bitters in it. You know, if I was a drunk college kid going into a bar, it's going to be sour mix and whatever bottom shelf Canadian mist out there.
You're just having like a $2 drink. You're trying to find what the cheapest drink in the bar is.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, Japanese whiskey, I love them. I love it. It's great. It's wonderful. The story behind it of trying to make something that's not a thing yet is amazing, and it only happened in like just 100 years ago. Like there's still so much more to. I don't know if they'll change it a lot, but there's still so much more exploring that people can do. I feel like when people say whiskey, like I drink whiskey, like Japanese whiskey, you never had it. But you've had whiskeys before. You've had your Jameson, your scotches, but you never had Japanese whiskey. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, once you've had it, I haven't had Japanese whiskey in probably 3 years, but I still remember how it tastes, how great it was, and how comparable it was to Scotch, while also being a completely different whiskey. So I love Japanese whiskey.
That makes sense.
And that's the story.
It makes sense
of Japanese whiskey.
Because I don't think I've ever had especially like a drink 3 years ago. I don't remember any drinks I've had 3 years ago. The fact that you can see like, I haven't had it in 3 years, but I still specifically remember the taste means like it was a memorable drink.
Yeah, there's still some
like it's something that definitely is like a high quality thing. It's like it's a fine wine in a sense.
Yeah, there's still some whiskeys that I could tell the difference on, American wise. I remember I haven't hung out with my friends since before COVID, and we all went to a rooftop bar, and we're all hanging out, and my buddy hands me a drink. It was like, you want to try this? And it was just a straight on the rocks whiskey, and I sip it, and I'm like, oh, this is Larceny. And he was like, how the do you do that? Like, because I remember the taste of Larceny's whiskey. It was great, and I love that. It had a unique little taste to it.
No, of course you should be able to take like vodka, maybe not, but like
Yeah.
like something like that. You can like that's like if I handed you, your Natty Light, or I handed you
My Natty Light.
a shock top, or like a Blue Moon shock top thing, or I handed you like a specific like a pale ale. You're gonna know the difference between.
Yeah. If you have like a hoppy beer or a Heffenweiser or something like that, it's
Exactly.
gonna be different. Yeah, you're gonna be able to taste different. So, what do you think about Japanese whiskey?
I don't know. I haven't had it.
Do you want to? What do you think about the story behind it? Do you want to taste it now? You want to go out and?
I do actually. I'm very curious because like, and as you know, like I'm not a big drinker. Like that's not really my thing. But like the fact that the fact that anyone can say 3 years ago I had this and I remembered it because it was so good, like that already fascinates me. I need to try it. But like, I think if I did try it, it would have to be like just a straight shot of it to see what it tastes like. Before like and mixing into anything, because I am one of those people that says like I hate the people that are like, I only have my whiskey straight, like I can't have anything with it. But like it is, to be fair, it is a way to get the actual flavor in it.
Yeah,
Like if
yeah.
you've been to like a whiskey tasting, I've been to a whiskey tasting before. I've been to a distillery to like try it, and like that is the only way to actually taste what it tastes like. It's same thing with tequila, same thing with like any like rum. Like that's the only way you can taste it. It's like
Yeah.
just a straight palate free thing. So I mean, no, I would definitely try it. Honestly, probably next time I go to a liquor store, I might actually look and see if it's there.
I feel like people, if you buy a shot of Japanese whiskey on the, you get it like just get a straight. You don't say you want a shot of it. You just normally say if you want. I want to. Hey, can I just get a whiskey straight? Get Japanese whiskey straight. You just give you a little whiskey glass and about that much in it. If they like you, a little bit more. But then you just sip that, and like if somebody asks you, you're like, oh, I'm trying this Japanese whiskey for the first time. People aren't gonna look at you like you're an alcoholic.
Oh,
like,
no.
If I go to a bar and I get a Jameson straight, and people are like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, Jameson." They're like, "Oh, fucking okay, buddy." Like
I'm trying Jameson for the first time. I'm just
gotta
seeing if
ride
it's like a
home.
life-changing event.
Yeah, you cannot sommelier or be an elitist with anything under $30 in whiskey. People will look at you weird. I can't be like, oh, I'm trying my Canadian mist, just getting all the palates of it, just trying to see where it is flavor wise.
I'm really trying to taste this this Yingling lager. Just really get the infusions of like the barley in there.
It's like,
But no, I mean it's a different thing. It's definitely not something that like the average person probably would have had before. Like and I think that's what makes it interesting. That makes it a worthwhile topic of that ties in better than if we explored Captain Morgan. Although I'm sure the story behind Captain Morgan is very interesting still too.
yeah, that's a recent thing. I think that was made in like the 70s, wasn't it? But I could
Was
talk about alcohol all day. We'll do another alcohol deep dive.
I could talk about
one
alcohol all day.
I could talk about alcohol all day. Like any bartending, any kind of like whiskeys or drinks or beers, I could go on all day about it. I love it.
Former bartender, current alcoholic.
That's get this T-shirt. Let's do it. My name has been Dakota Broski. Today on Brews and Who News, I'm joined by always my co-host Richard.
I'll see you
Follow
guys
him on social media.
We'll see you next time.
I'll see you next time, and then follow us on all social medias. Brews and Who Knew. Give this podcast